You are infinitely loved by an infinite God. Everyone you love is infinitely loved by an infinite God, way more than you could ever love them. Everyone you hate is infinitely loved by an infinite God, way more powerfully than you could ever hate them. Welcome, welcome, welcome to the Love Your Unlovable podcast. I'm your host, the wildly unlovable, yet infinitely loved Eileen Chevalier. I'm not sure what, if anything, happens before we make our way into our mother's womb. I've often thought we must agree to this peril we call Earth, the treacherous bonds we know as family. One September, I went swimming with a boy, thin and pale and strong, the full moon on his red hair, my face swallowed by his blue eyes. I'd seen him playing music and stayed to walk with him as he packed up his gear. Weeks later, on a deserted sidebar, we held each other in the cold water under the night shadows. The echoes of all I knew about the man I'd walked through life with seemed to resonate in the air around us. I forgot that God had told me otherwise. This was my truth. His freckled skin, glowing callous fingers pressed against my skin, the cold, the water, the moonlight. But it was a mistaken moment. It was years before I met the one who wrote those words of love for me. I knew it was a misstep, but my impatient heart convinced me, with heaps of perfection surrounding me, that there was too much stacked against the words God spoke to me, too much lost in the turning from them. I'd been at this boy's apartment, reveling in his company as always, and why not? He was everything I wanted. Smart, adventurous, great with people, incredibly talented. I longed for our conversations to continue, keep going indefinitely. I wondered if that was possible, if this boy could be the one I could make fire with. Yes, I thought. No, God corrected. Leave. I heard, audibly heard, God say to me, this is not him. God had bypassed cochlea and sent neurochemical messages to me before, and I'd known the vibrations of his laughter when I said something absurd or he played a joke. The first thoughts I said to this policeman in the sky were, I don't believe you. What are you going to do about it? My 5-year-old body tensed, preparing for the lightning to flash through my bedroom window, past the quilt printed curtains tied up on either side. I braced for the brimstone, but I felt laughter instead, the deep, contagious bemusement of a loving father. Realizing that I'd just been testing him, and that he was the opposite of angry, I joined in his mirth. Good father. No angry judgment. I felt a different laughter, one to lift me out of my misery, when I walked through the woods, complaining to him about my teeth. I was waiting for veneer for my top front teeth, and the false ones kept breaking apart in my mouth. This current set was exceptionally long. I felt like Bugs Bunny, and I told God so. He didn't seem to respond, but as I turned to walk back to my car, I saw a man in the distance approaching along the narrow path. Many hours I'd spent wandering the woods alone. No people, no streets, no phones to distract me. This was the first time I'd encountered another lone traveler. I was assessing my risk level. Totally vulnerable. Only the birds would serve as witness. When he came close enough for me to look at him. Brimmed cap, round face, buttoned up brown coat. He reminded me of someone. Elmer Fudd. I nearly burst out laughing. My smile was irrepressible. What must that stranger have thought of this defenseless girl, smiling like she just heard the joke of her life? She had. Hilarious, God. It was to this God, the one who made me laugh when I was sad and offered no offense when I berated him, that I listened. He told me way back when to get up and leave, so I did. I said my farewells and went to my car. I sat down and put my keys in the ignition. But despite the chill in the air, I didn't turn it on. I shivered as loneliness settled in around me, and I found myself unwilling to leave the warmth I'd just come from. My mother had said that maybe God just didn't have a family for me. My music minister said that God would surely fill my great desire for one. I wanted my mother to be wrong, but wasn't convinced that God could do an adequate job fulfilling my desires. Every available Christian guy filled me with dread instead of longing. Who could God possibly have for me? No. Better make this choice on my own and insist he bless it later. No other man I'd seen came close to the one I'd just said goodnight to. So I went back to his door. He was surprised, but I'd made my choice, one that I wouldn't reconsider for 3 more years. He continued to impress me. We continued to enjoy one another's company, surviving a stressful semester in Berlin and the wrath of my parents when we moved in together. Yes, he's that guy. I loved his family, loved being with them more than being with my own. They were orderly, productive, peaceful, and enjoyed experiencing the world together. Weekends at their house were restorative, summers abroad with them enlightening. Then everyone moved. His parents bought a house in Europe, and we oversaw the sale of their house and moved into another while they were settling into a place in France. He, too, was traveling overseas for graduate school, so this was our last month together. I contemplated our future with what those handful of kids might look like, remembering my own maker, my own childhood. With some apprehension as we sorted boxes, I asked again what he thought about God. He didn't really. He thought about the hero's journey and described Joseph Campbell and the lives of the rune makers. I thought for the first time that maybe God was right. Maybe this beautiful genius wasn't going to feed a hearth with me together after all this. We were drawn to different flames. My fuel could not feed his fires, nor his mine. I said goodbye again, said it over and over for 2 more years because I kept walking back to his familiar welcome. He kept inviting me in. I'd loved him for so long and so well. He'd loved me too. Now, with the weight of an actual ring on my finger and wedding invitations waiting to be made, it was time to find his number and call. "It's been a while. How are you?" I began. "Things are going well. I'm on holiday with my parents." I love his parents. I'm afraid I'll miss their welcome even more than his. "Are they well? Enjoying France?" It's easier to talk about those we both love, and the conversation feels natural, easy. But after these pleasantries, I must tell him about the man that I alone love. He tells me about his brother's divorce. The daggers in his voice reach out for me as well. The betrayer. I imagine his voice as he will speak my name in the future. So I called because I wanted you to know from me that I'm getting married. There's silence as I wait for him to process. "Are you sure?" He sounds skeptical. "But I did date that Russian redhead once for a few months. These things pass." I am. It's true, and I find it easy to say, despite the bridge that is burning before me. I am sure, with all of my being. I'm sure, not just because I'm smitten and because the one who loves me most, that God I've been loving for longer than either of these men, has told me that Mike is the one. His spirit calls to me on equal impetuosity, a desire to engage when others would withdraw. The peace and orderliness that my old lover offered came at the cost of locking away my passion, halting my pursuit of God. But with Mike, it is our pursuit. Even when we argue about God, we are pursuing truth, and that search for deeper truths is worth forsaking the more evident, more alluring ones. The desire is too undeniable to dismiss and too incomprehensible to explain. Well, as long as you're happy. I am. In fact, I am deliriously happy. but not always. At times, we are a river meeting a brick wall. Mike halts my path. I erode his carefully constructed veneer.